Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zanu PF has denied the people of Zimbabwe a meaningful say in the governance of the country out of greed. Period. They've wanted absolute power to the point they would rather burn the house down than let anybody else rule the country. That extreme version of greed was well captured by Stuart Doran in an article in The Strategist. And I quote, the new regime can be reviewed from different angles, but the nub of it is this. There is a recognition that the economic fiasco of the last 20 years was suboptimal. But Emmerson and his fellow travelers will burn the house down if they feel it necessary. Make no mistake, their will to power is every bit as intense as Mugabe's, as is their belief that they owe the country choicest fruit by right of conquest. There is no comprehending Zimbabwe without an appreciation of that mentality. Yet men fail to get it because they don't read the country's history. In 1979, at the height of the struggle against white rule, a diplomat who mixed frequently with Mugabe and other leaders of his party observed that Zanu PF does not seem to attach much importance to the destruction caused by the prolonged war. They have said they were content to see Zimbabwe totally demolished if that was the price to be paid for preventing others from ruling it. Their attitude has not changed an iota, notwithstanding the passage of 40 years and Mugabe's departure. After all, the men who now rule wielded his hatchets for the most part of that 40 years. That's a tough ask for the same group of individuals who have shredded the country since 1980. A fraternity that will continue to loot, will continue to be twitchy about the merest hint of dissent, and will continue to patently despise the notion that it requires the consent of the people to govern. It is not a question of whether Mnangagwa and company will continue to view Zimbabwe's resources as a God-given right, but whether they can walk the line between controlled greed and madness, he concluded. Of course, he was right. Robert Mugabe and his Zanu PF cronies have never ever admitted that they have the divine right to the choicest fruit and that they will burn down the country first and let anyone else rule it. They have more tact than that. They've justified their insatiable greed and denial of the people's basic rights, freedoms and rights, including the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country, and even the right to life, on the grounds that Zanu PF was the only party that could be trusted to stop the return of the colonial imperialists. While Zanu PF has made a big song and dance about the opposition being puppets of the West, pushing a regime change agenda, the party itself has allowed the Chinese and the Russians to waltz into the country. And they've been the mastermind behind the wholesale looting of the country's resources. And needless to say, both China and Russia have been behind Zanu PF's vote rigging juggernaut, and have supplied the regime with all it needed to maintain its propaganda and its tyrannical oppression. This is nothing new. Zanu PF borrowed this straight from George Orwell's Animal Farm. The turning point of the Animal Farm revolution was when the pigs kept the milk and the apples to themselves. You do not imagine, I hope, that we pigs are doing it in the spirit of selfishness and privilege. Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. Milk and apples, this has been proven by science, comrades, contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. We pigs are brain workers, cried Squealer. Do you know what will happen if we pigs fail in our duty? Jones will be back. That is the same dirty tact that Zanu PF has been using. I think it is bad enough that the people of Zimbabwe put up with Zanu PF. What infuriated every thinking Zimbabwean out there was to see how South Africa, ANC in particular, it started to side with Zanu PF. This is a visit of a clip speech by ANC Secretary General Mbalula. Let's listen to it.
We might have problems with Zanu PF, but in Zimbabwe, you must know what is progressive and our ally is Zanu PF. And reactionaries do not want us to say that. Nelson Chamisa and his allies are not our allies. They don't speak our language. They are not with us in this new world order agenda of the alternative, multipolar world we want to build. They are not with us. They are with the neoliberals and the liberal agenda in the world. As the ANC, we don't subscribe to that. We are anti-imperialist. So any political party that perpetuates the entrenchment of neocolonialism and imperialism is not our ally. It's not our ally. Our allies can be committing blunders, including the former liberation movements, but they remain our allies. These political liberation movements. You go to Nicaragua and the Sandinistas, they came back after 20 years. You know, if we were to lose power, comrades, we will never come back easily because development and boom of this economy is coming. And those who will win, they will look like they are nice guys who understand where this country is going. ANC. It's easy for anyone to open their mouth and criticize because that's what you suffer as an incumbent. That's what you suffer as an incumbent. Your task as an incumbent is to stay true to what you are supposed to do. That's why, as I conclude, we must never be tolerant to people who are deployed but are not doing the right things.
Okay, wait, everyone.
Sorry about that. So there we are. There we have it. What we are seeing here and what the Secretary General of ANC was saying there was that they would support Zanu PF no matter what, even if they're doing the wrong thing. In this particular case, specifically, even if they're rigging elections, in the name of promoting this new agenda. What is irritating, of course, is that this new agenda is denying the ordinary people their fundamental right to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And ANC, was promoting that in the interest of stopping this imperialists coming back. This is typical rule by fear. I think the only saving grace for the people of South Africa is that our friend here was not an influential leader at the time of Nelson Mandela. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if he had been an influential figure at that period, South Africa would be a different country. It definitely would have followed the same policies and agenda that Zanu PF followed. Deny the people a meaningful say in the governance of the country in the name of stopping the imperialists coming back. He would have done it. He was trying to prop up regimes like Zanu PF in the hope that the people of South Africa would keep ANC in power. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for South Africa, the country had free, fair, and credible elections, and the people of South Africa were able to decide for themselves that ANC no longer served the nation's interests. That is at the heart of our problem in Zimbabwe. And we have been stuck with Zanu PF these last 44 years precisely because Zanu PF was able to rig elections. Under the pretext that the opposition were puppets of the West, pushing a regime change agenda. The people were denied the opportunity to have a meaningful say who they wanted to govern the country under that pretext. I've said it before. The failure by ANC to win majority in South Africa after the 29th May election is a turning point in the history of Zimbabwe. SADC in general. Because as much as Zanu PF is relied on South Africa, Russia, and China, the demise of ANC opens a door. As much as Russia and China would want to prop up Zanu PF, what Zanu PF cannot deny is that it has got the commitment to hold free, fair, and credible elections, unlike those two countries. Last year's elections, both SADC, the regional body, and AU, the continental body, condemned Zanu PF's conduct of those elections. SADC accepted the report, but did nothing about it. There is no doubt in my mind that countries like South Africa, under the leadership of ANC, played a key role in that. ANC had made it very clear that they did not want to see regime change in Zimbabwe. If we had a full clip of that video, that is exactly what Mbalula was saying. They don't want regime change in Zimbabwe. Zanu PF is our ally. We'll support them even if they're doing the wrong thing. He didn't want to say what that wrong thing is. But in truth, what he was saying is even if they rig the elections, we'll support them, which is exactly what they did. Only President Ramaphosa and two others, African leaders, attended Emmerson Mnangagwa's inauguration last year. Mbalula himself attended it too, and so did many other ANC party leaders to show their support of the regime. We are turning over a new page. ANC's failure to win the majority in South Africa has reduced ANC's influence in Zimbabwe. Zanu PF knows, as much as bad habits are very difficult to drop, rigging elections, Zanu PF will struggle to stop rigging elections. It is in the DNA of that regime. But they must also know that if they rig elections, the next elections, and with ANC out of the way, the chances are they will be punished. Another GNU, as happened in 2008, while Zanu PF managed to survive, bribe, and stop MDC implementing any meaningful reforms during that first GNU, they may find maybe this time it will not be that easy. If Zanu PF cannot force the opposition, bribe them again to do nothing about reforms, Zanu PF will be finished. And this time, I think the people of Zimbabwe must gear ourselves to make sure that either 2028 elections are free, fair, and credible, or we do not participate in them and give the regime any semblance that this was a free, fair, and credible election process. And this time, make sure that we do not give SADC any excuse for doing nothing if Zanu PF rigs elections. That is our task in hand. I think at the moment we've had a very good start. The people of South Africa have delivered the change that Zimbabwe desperately needed. We did not need ANC propping up Zanu PF to push their own selfish agenda of hoping that they can hang on to power under the pretext that only political parties with a liberation war history are competent to rule the country. That model has been broken. And many other countries have seen it. South Africa itself has had to embrace it because the likes of Nelson Mandela had the vision to make sure that that country was a democratic country where the people of South Africa had a meaningful say on who governed the country. That is the right that the people of Zimbabwe are fighting for now. And thank God, we are not going to have upstarts like Squealer, Mbalula, telling us we cannot do so. Propping up Zanu PF under the pretext that they're doing us a favor. As I said, if Mbalula had preceded Nelson Mandela, I think South Africa would be a totally different country. Thank God there was Nelson Mandela before Mbalula. Thank God South Africa is a democratic country. And the recent elections have shown that democracy works, that the people can remove a corrupt and incompetent regime from power. And the said regime has no choice but to accept it. The people of Zimbabwe want the same thing. We should be fighting for the same thing, for the right to a meaningful say in the governance of Zimbabwe. That is the number one issue that we should be occupied with. 44 years of rigged elections is bad enough. It should not make it 48 years of rigged elections. 2028 elections must either be free, fair, and credible, or Zanu PF must not be allowed to get away with another rigged election. That is the message I would like to leave with you today. Thank you very much, and have a good day.